Hey, everybody. So before we get into today's Survivor 50 Wishlist podcast about Marquesas, I just wanted to give a quick disclaimer at the top. We admittedly recorded this podcast prior to the news that Boston Rob Mariano would be competing on season 3 of The Traitors. So over the course of the podcast, we don't actually talk a lot about Boston Rob. I say let's put a pin on it to actually talk more about In Redemption Island, which will be recorded after the news. But if you notice that we make no mention of the fact that Rob has been cast on another reality show besides Survivor, that's the reason why. So keep that in mind. Hope you enjoy today's podcast. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Survivor 50 Wishlist podcast, an off-season series that is here to determine who could and should be on the list to return for the upcoming season, Survivor 50. Today, we are talking about the Marquesa, as it's affectionately known. We're not going to Jordan in this case. We're talking about the 4th season of Survivor and breaking down who from this cast could prospectively come back for season 50. Now, of course, we are going back to the beach for this one in Survivor history, but the person I'm talking with today, I would never call a beach. It is the great Chantele Francis. Chantele, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. It was really, really nice going back down memory lane because I was a little bit younger than Rob at the time when this was airing. And I was just like, I was watching every season of Survivor. And I love feeling like, oh my God, I remember being young and like having this huge crush on Boston and Rob and being like literally he was the person that made me really want the strategy in these shows.
Ooh.
And so he before I was more so like, oh, pick a number out of a hat and be fair about it. Like I was on that side. And then he came along and I'm like, oh, I like this. Maybe it's because he was cute and I just wanted to like follow him around or whatever. But he definitely was a change maker in the way that I interpret reality TV. So it was really cool going back down. I did a rewatch. I didn't see the finale episode, but I did a
Spoiler
rewatch.
alert, Vesepia won. Sorry, I didn't want to ruin that.
I did remember that.
And I find it interesting that you're like, oh, let's not do any more picking things out of a hat when this is the first time the Purple Rock tiebreaker shows up on the show.
Fair. But you know what I'm saying in the sense that like everybody wanted it to be fair and like, you know, good people and don't lie. And that narrative was kind of running rampant through definitely the first 4 seasons. And so I just remember him being like not wanting to go along with those plans and just being picked off by big groups of people. He maybe loved strategy. And so it was nice to go back down to my origin story for competitive reality shows.
Well, listen, if you are a Chantele type and you are just happening into this podcast via Boston Rob's first season, just to reintroduce the concept at the top here, this very incredible body of work that I'm trying to engage in right now, as opposed to Sarah's body of work, which could be talked about in a different way, a la what Vesepia does early on. So basically, every weekday, I'm coming to you with a different member of the RHAP or Survivor community to break down a season of Survivor, specifically through the lens of, we all know, officially announced, Survivor 50 will be a returnee season. And so we are trying to figure out who, from a practical standpoint, and also perhaps an idealistic standpoint, should be in the running to be cast on said season. By the time we are all done with this and we have our compiled shortlist of 46 seasons of people, those people will then be put into a big fan vote where you all out there will determine who, in your opinion, should be the cast of Survivor 50. So our goal for today, Chantele, is we are going to look at the cast of Survivor Marquesas and determine, if you will, who do we say yes to and who do we say no to? And hopefully we'll come out of here with a handful of people that we want these fans to vote on at the end of this entire process.
So just with those no-nos, is that what they were actually called, or is that just what they were calling them? I actually didn't go into
That's a great question. I will Google it right now.
Like those no-nos were disgusting. I didn't remember that. I probably blocked that out of my memory. But just seeing them covered in all those bites, I wonder how long their bodies took to recover from all those bug bites.
Yeah, so I'm looking it up right now. Yeah, there are no-nos, I think is a name for it. I've also seen no-seum is
Oh,
another,
okay.
I don't know if
So
that's
it's like a
another
nickname for
colloquialism.
no-see-em, maybe.
Yeah, which is like a colloquialism to describe the fact that, like, you don't see them, but you certainly feel them. And yeah, definitely
Oh.
burned in my brain is Boss Rob spelling no spelled Nono. Just one of the many lies that we got to see over the course of. Listen, we were talking very recently about hot mess tribes in the new era. Arguably, Madaamu was the one to begin it all, I would say, with just the first real hot mess tribe in Survivor history. So we are going to break it all down. Chantele, Survivor Marquesas is a really interesting season of Survivor, especially in retrospect. Because, I mean, you mentioned the no-nos. Jeff Probst has very famously said he did not like Marquesas. He does not favorably look back on it. I think at least partially because of the filming conditions. You know, I do believe in the advertising for Marquesas. They had said that, like, they're going to start with nothing. Like, they're not going to be given food to begin with. And so there was a little bit more survivalistic aspects put
Mhm.
in. Obviously, these contestants were getting injured all over the place, sometimes hilariously in the form of John Carroll. And then you have, yeah, just the general displeasure of probably being on those beaches. They were probably lamenting the fact that they went back to the beach with just how tough it was to film the show. So I think that has also colored a bit of the way Jeff looks back on it. We'll certainly talk about the winner in Vesepia. I think there was probably, from production's perspective, another candidate they would have wanted to see win, who unfortunately fell tragically short. On the other hand, as you're mentioning, this ends up sort of being the backdoor origin story to the merge boot from this season becoming arguably the face of the entire franchise from a contestant perspective.
Well, definitely. Like, I just feel this actually season, as much as like how it's a little bit more slow moving, and like you kind of get to know the characters and all these people and the hot mess tribe and it all. But it actually, there was some parts of it that felt like new era Survivor, like with them kind of going in and being like, we want to take away everything from them and strip them. And so it was interesting to me because I always feel like right now with like new age Survivor, it's like nothing like the old school. And then I'm like, wait, actually, it's kind of similar. And so wait, who was the merge moved again? It was
Boston Rob.
no, he's merge moved, but he doesn't get into the merge, right?
Yeah.
Which is very new school Survivor, as where like you come to the merge and they actually don't get to be on the jury, and then it goes into the next
Yeah,
vote.
he
Yeah.
even got to name the tribe solely onto, but he got evicted before the words could even escape his mouth.
Yeah, I was thinking, I'm like, wait, wasn't that, it wasn't Rob that he gets on the jury, and I was like, that's so
Yeah,
wild. I forgot that he's not on the actual jury.
until Winners of War, Boston Rob never sat on a Survivor jury, infamously.
That's really wild because like I just think of he should have had like the full experience, and I feel like he was such a big part of season 4, like his origin story into Survivor, that the fact that he didn't get to cast a vote, like that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, so another big thing to take away from Marquesas, I would say arguably not to put my bingo ball forward yet for maybe an upcoming Summer of Survivor podcast, is the probably most memorable moment from this season in terms of the echoes in Survivor history, which is the fall of the Road to 4, the first ever genuine power shift in Survivor history, where the previous 3 seasons, the blueprint of how to play the game kind of had been laid out, right? You go into the merge, you have an alliance, whoever has more of the numbers, whether it be a tribe or an alliance, then just kind of systematically picks off everyone who's outside of it. And then y'all make it to the end, and then may the best person win. We saw that in Borneo with the Toggies. We saw it in Australia to a certain extent with Tina and Colby and Keith. We saw it in Africa with the Baran Alliance. And this is the Wind Shift, or the Wind's Twist, I believe is the name of the swap episode in this season, adequately enough, because we have one little coconut chop challenge change the course of Survivor history, where the outsiders come together and say, wait a minute, we have 5, they have 4. I don't know who Brad Culpepper is at this point, but 5 does go into 9. Let's get rid of it. And as a result, I know Rob has certainly said that his gameplay was influenced by what happened at that move. He then influences someone like Johnny Fairplay. So again, it sort of gets forgotten about, to your point, Chantele, where blindsides are just a common course in the theme of Survivor. But really, this hierarchy getting flipped on its head was absolutely unprecedented.
Oh, it was so good. And me watching back as well, thinking like, I'm like, can't they get an idol or something to like help like figure something out? Where are the advantages? And so it actually made me understand a little bit why and like where the emergence of the immunity idol eventually becomes is to stop or like just maybe give some hope to these small groups being able to take out these big numbers. Like, no, I know that they have the numbers at this point with the 5 versus 4, and the fact that like, hey, we got to remember that people that are on the outside can come together and make the majority. It was really great to see that happen, especially because Nalia and Pascal are not necessarily the most strategic players in the game. They're quite loyal, and they're not going to backstab likely. And so the fact that they were able to come together and go with this vote, I thought it was pretty awesome, pretty epic. And watching it back again, I was like, yes, like take them down.
Well, before we take this cast down, just a quick reminder, make sure you're subscribed to our various feeds to make sure you don't miss an episode of our Survivor 50 wish list. Again, we are doing these every single weekday. Podcasts will drop in your feed, and the Survivor feed specifically at robhasawebsite.com/survivor feed at 6 a.m. Eastern. And then 4 hours later at 10 a.m., you can check out the video version. For those of you that are watching, you can see, for example, what color Chantel's mug is. That'll be a quiz later on. Respond in the comments with what color Chantel's mug is to show that you were watching the video. So again, that'll happen every weekday. You can subscribe to our YouTube feed as well as at robhasawebsite.com/YouTube. Let us not delay any further, Chantel, because we've already got some stuff to talk about at the top. And again, I'm going to talk about these things in phases, in chunks, starting from the top down with our top two here. Vecepia and Nalia. On a cold day in Central Park over 20 years ago, we found out that Vecepia would become not only the first Black woman to win the show, apparently, according to my research, the first Black reality TV winner ever? Maybe from like a competitive standpoint.
I would say the challenge though had like some people win. Maybe would it be earlier than that? Maybe not.
Maybe not. Yeah, because it was 2002, or yeah, it was 2002. 2002 that this ended up airing in. I mean, out of the early seasons of the challenge, like technically
like
had
road
winners.
Rules, maybe.
Yeah, road rules might count as well. At least this is what Survivor Wiki is telling me. Okay. But still, very large. But Vecepia has just been this very interesting question mark when it comes to Survivor casting. She has done, obviously, a couple of interviews more recently, especially one on Talking with T-Bird a few years ago, and she stated that she was one of the rare winners not contacted for Winners at War. Maybe it's partially due to the fact that Jeff Probst has not necessarily looked back kindly on Marquesas. It might be due to the fact that Vesepia's story, and maybe Chantel, you watched the season more recently than I have, so you could speak to the validity of this, that her gameplay was a little bit more purposely under the radar, where it was sort of just stay out of the drama, let these people take each other out, and then I'll sort of swoop in and take down the win, which is not like the best TV product for it. But I think the thing we're going to have to come in here and ask ourselves is like, are we giving Vecepia her due today?
Well, I definitely remember when I was watching it originally, I was watching it live and I was falling, like I was under Boston Rob's spell. And so Boston Rob
so you were on Redemption Island.
Basically, I was on his spell and under his spell, and he was kind of seeing her like she would just go and kiss butt, and she wasn't really asserting her own gameplay, and so I still kind of felt that way, and I don't know if it's because of my influence of the past version of me, or because I still kind of felt that she didn't, for me, push her game forward. Like she wasn't a huge catalyst in how everything it kind of shifted and turned. And so I would have loved to still see her play again. I do think that she is 100% should have been contacted for Winners at War, her gameplay is still interesting. She still did win. She's still a deserved winner. Like, it's very hard to win these seasons, no matter how you play the game. And so the fact that she did win, I think, is exceptional, of course. But her gameplay wouldn't be one that I'd be like, let's study and follow it and do exactly what she did and know that we could get the same result. I think it was just like kind of some happy circumstances around her being able to get to the end and win. I don't know if everybody could replicate this gameplay and have the same result.
Yeah, I mean, I think she probably wouldn't want to replicate the result. I believe when she was talking in her Talking with T-Bird interview, she was someone who, at least at the time the interview was being given, was still following the show and wanted to talk about playing a bit more of a louder, more out there game. And maybe it was due to the circumstances that she was kind of watching the personalities around her, and is she like, drama, 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 I'm just gonna stay out of it right now. Boston Rob, Johnny Pots and Pans, even Sean, y'all can get into it. I'm just going to hang back, write in my journal so I can break the Fallen Comrades challenge later on, and then slip my way to the end. I mean, I do think she plays perhaps the most impressively in that finale episode where Sean had just been voted out. She wins a clutch immunity at the Final Four and then does hop on board with Kathy to force that tie, which puts her in a situation where, she has a couple of outs there. Obviously, Nalia is going to be the one to take her to the final three, and Kathy may have as well, where if she goes to the end with Nalia and Pascal, like, game over. She has to win out once again. And so I do think that's probably the best move she had to make, which was only by proxy the fact that she had her back against the wall. I mean, again, what's interesting about Vesepia's run is that she is kind of in this rarefied air, even across, 40 plus Survivor winners, of like someone who was truly on the outside, who was able to make their way to the end and win. Vesepia and Sean were the only two original Mataamu members in their merged tribe. Like, despite the fact that she had just been swapped onto Row 2 and bonded a bit with the people that would become the Row 2-4, she was still kind of regarded as an outsider. There's a reason why she's eliminated in that coconut chop challenge early. And so I think on paper, I agree that maybe in execution, watching the show back, and maybe that's partially due to how it was edited, it's not exactly like a huge, impressively flashy game. But I think if you break apart a lot of the core tenets of what she was able to do, especially given her position, and especially given the fact that it was only the fourth season of the show, there's some there.
Well, I think like her playing this game, like obviously being social and knowing not to maybe be in the drama, like all these are really good elements of a great game player. I think just not having the undercurrent of strategy and intention and moving things like behind the scenes. I think because we don't have that element is what does for me doesn't make it a well-rounded winner and strategist and game player. And so I do like I hear some of yours. Yeah, no, those are pretty good points. Like, yeah, okay, yeah, we could see her in a light of being a decent game player, but I think for the whole season, she didn't really have a gameplay or game plan,
Mm-hmm.
and that for me is why I don't really see her necessarily as a master game player. But I
Yeah.
think it was a deserved win.
Yeah, and we can certainly talk. I want to put sort of a pin on, whether production would want to bring her back, because again,
Mm.
while there is sort of corroborating evidence that they wouldn't, I would say if there was a time to bring her back, the environment for 50 would be different than the environment for 40, and we can get into that in a little bit. What should be noted, though, is, of course, you have to ask on the other side of things, would Vesepia want to come back? So she was asked about this on Talking with T-Bird, and like a lot of other alumni was kind of giving this sort of like Fancy Fencerton answer where she's like, I would like the chance to do it. Obviously, she was not happy that she wasn't even given an interest call for Winners at War. She did point out that she is, I believe, 69, or no, she's 58 years old at this point right now, mixing her up with another contestant, which, listen, is not terrible compared to some of the other people that we voted through so far. She did note that she had, major surgery. I think she had torn one of her ACLs, and she does say when she
Ooh.
watches the challenges, she does get worried sometimes of like, if you have to make me leap off a tall tower, I would be so pissed if I tear my ACL again. So I think if there's anything that would make Vesepia want to say no, it would be the physical aspects of it.
Well, and also though, I don't know if her style of gameplay would adapt in this faster season. I
Mm.
think that how she, she's able to get these bonds and these connections, and that takes time. And I think that maybe the speed of this new era, I don't know if she would actually be able to vibe with it. And then other people playing with her, like they're like, okay, who we're doing? Let's make a move. Let's flip. Like they're faster paced. They want answers. Let's go. Like, okay, like voting block here, voting block there. I don't know if she would be able to keep up with that pace of how the new era goes. And so, if she's still watching, I'd hope she's still watching. I'm not sure if she would be vibing with seeing herself in the new paced era.
Any thoughts about Nalia? I do think she's someone who makes it all the way to the end, nearly wins the game, but I would argue perhaps when you look back in Survivor history, not necessarily like a key runner-up you would want to see come back for a second time.
She's very, very sweet.
Sweet Pea, they call her.
Sweet pea, and I definitely teared up when she got taken on the reward challenge, even though it was Vesepia's birthday. Like, I loved seeing her and Pascal's relationship. It reminded me of Elizabeth and what was her guy's name?
Roger, Kentucky
Roger.
Joe.
Like I like that relationship, and so like I definitely like this archetype, and I was like, we haven't really seen that type of personality in more recent years, but I think that I'm okay for personally right now with seeing Nilia again. I think she's very sweet, but I don't, she didn't really have enough gameplay for me to need to see her archetype again here.
Yeah, the only appeal I would see is that, she was in her early 20s when she played before.
True.
She's 44 now, and there's always some interesting stuff there too, right? Of like playing in your 20s versus playing in your 40s, where assumingly you know a lot more about the world. But I think we could exercise that exercise for a lot of other contestants that played in the same age range who maybe didn't, for example, go to their final tribal council and say that they only started playing the game on like day 21.
Yeah, that wouldn't work in the new era because
Because that would be like final six.
Yeah, I mean, you know what though? Who knows? If she was really eager about wanting to play and being like, I've been watching the season, I've become a big fan, I've seen where my gameplay failed and how I could have maybe even won with in the circumstances that I was in if I'd said this or I did that. And if she had that heart and that hunger, and I really heard that she wanted to come back and play, then I might be a little bit more supportive. But who she was on the show, I don't know if I'd want to see her come back.
Well, let's get into our jury here, full of the Row to 4 and friends in quotations. In reverse finish order, we have Kathy, Pascal, who was the victim of the first ever rock draw in Survivor history, Sean, Robert DeCanio, but you probably know him better as The General, Tammy, Zoe, and John Carroll himself. So I got to start with the first name introduced here, Kathy. It's odd again in retrospect. It's sort of lost to the annals of Survivor history, especially given just the entire temperament that happened over the course of All Stars. But like, you cannot state enough how much of a fan favorite Kathy was. This was someone who was really on the outs of the Row 2 tribe early on. They were the love tribe, but they were not loving Kathy, who was sticking out in terms of a personality. But honestly, like, it all feels like when she peed on John Carroll's head, like, she became the number one fan favorite in a manner of speaking because, she gets this swap with Pascal and Nalia, which brings her closer to them. They then make this flip over with Sean and Vesepia. She becomes the swing vote at the final 5, and it has been expressed many, many times. If Kathy does not have a wardrobe malfunction that causes her to fall off at that final immunity challenge, and she wins, she would be the winner of Survivor Marquesas. And so Rob and I will talk about this, obviously, in a few days. She was a slam dunk choice at the time to bring back for All Stars.
And you know what? I went on that journey again. In the beginning, I was just kind of a little bit annoyed by her. And I was like, but wait, I feel like I recognize her as somebody that I like. And like, I was just reliving my Kathy experience. And by the end of the season, I was like, oh, right, I like this person. I really want to see her play again. And so I was actually thinking, I'm like, does she ever play again? I couldn't remember if she did or did not. And so thanks for reminding me that she does. And at this point, I know there's still other people in the mix, but she is somebody that I was thinking about for the season. I would be very, very curious and excited to see her come back.
I completely agree because look, the fact that she was a pivotal swing vote in, two of the biggest up in the air votes, not only of the season, but really in Survivor history, shows the fact that like she has a little bit of gamesmanship to her. When she did her Talking with T-Bird interview, she was, I think, one of the rare people to actually like fire tokens. She had said that, like, because I think it was given at the time of Winners at War, she said that she actually, in her day-to-day life, she's a big negotiator, a la
Mm.
Angelina. So she loves the wheeling and dealing that a Survivor economy involves. So you ask about, obviously, has she been sort of in production's eye since her time in All Stars? Apparently, her and her son Patrick, who does appear on the show, I believe he's the first loved one to actually like visit the camp in Survivor history, a tradition that will be continued after their stay. Apparently they were slated for Blood versus Water, or like she does a little bit of discrepant stuff. She's like, oh yeah, it was a few years ago. So and then they said they went in a different direction, but she was still being considered. And she does say, when answering the question about would she want to come back, she says, I think it would be a riot to go back and put some humor into the show, which, given Survivor 46, I don't know how much more humor we can take, but throw Kathy on there with one of the greatest laughs in Survivor history, and I'm happy.
Do you think that she would be excited to negotiate for rice?
Oh my God. Yes. She would fashion a blazer out of palm fronds, walk in there and be like, all right, Jeff, I'm going to hold you by the balls over this. Like, you give me 3, I'm going to give you 2.5. Take that, Probsty boy. Like, I think Kathy could absolutely give it to him. She is just such a great character. And again, I think a lot of that is obfuscated by what happened in All Stars. Not only obviously the fact that she's like the second juror, but a lot of ugliness involved in her relationship with Rob, despite the fact that she does vote for Boston Rob in the end. It was kind of a sour note to end her Survivor career on. So maybe part of me is just manifesting like, let's give a third shot to Kathy and hope that she does get that bounce back. Look, she is 69 years old, which is nice, but obviously from a physical perspective would not be great. But again, that's something I'm not necessarily holding to a lot of these old school castaways, just because this is fictional at the end of the day.
It is fictional. I'm not sure if she would want to put herself through that now, like today. How old is she now? Probably in her
69.
60. Yeah. That's a little bit like, would that be the oldest player to ever play? Do we know what?
No, Rudy was 75 when he played.
Okay, so still pretty up there. But if she wanted to play again, I would love to see her play again. And I wonder if he would have the same kind of nostalgia that TJ has when he's with the All Stars team. Because like he's so excited with like all these people that are around his age that he's been, talking to for 20 years. Like, is Jeff going to get like that with like people like Kathy, who was at the beginning when he was developing his Survivor persona, and the show was still like this phenomenon that was happening, and he was in the middle of the eye of the storm. I would love to see how Jeff would be with some of these old school players that were pretty impactful back then.
All right. Well, we got to talk about someone who I think a lot of fans have said is one of the most like criminal contestants that has only come back to or only played once over the course of Survivor. Sean Rector, of course, one of the biggest characters of the entire season, buddy with Boston Rob, the two of them really joking it up and working together on Mata Amu. Him and V, of course, being one of the tightest pairs in those first few seasons. And he's also one of the most outspoken as well on and off the show. Sean apparently got the call for All Stars, was reconsidered at the last second, which is tough. I would have loved to see him, but also, again, this will be prognosticating for a podcast that Rob and I do. I think if you look at that male cast, it's very tough to figure out like who you cut to replace Sean with. It would probably be his buddy, Boston Rob, but otherwise not a lot of chaff on the male side of that All-Stars cast. He had also said that he had been contacted for Blood versus Water, but he had sort of come forward at that point. Obviously, he had had a family. He had a bit older. He had come forward with sort of like a list of requests that he would want to do to get him on the show. And that list was not necessarily met. And so Sean has definitely, I would say, been very vocal in the past few years about how he has felt the show has kind of done him wrong, and I think more specifically done Vecepia wrong. He's talked in a bunch of interviews, both with Rob, with Dalton Ross as well, about how he feels like the show kind of obfuscated the fact that V was the first Black contestant to win the show, and that speaks perhaps towards some implicit bias. And so I think if you took Sean's temperature back in like 2019, 2020, after everything that happened with All Stars, he had really distanced himself from the Survivor community. It was a show that he no longer wanted to be affiliated with because he felt that certain biases and, certain ugliness that could be seen in the real world was represented, especially with some stuff that was happening in the latter 30s as well. But I'll bring this up now. Sean helped spearhead an incredible initiative that happened over the course of 2020 while he was giving these interviews, but had not yet crystallized into something with the Black Survivor Alliance, which also corresponded in a bunch of podcasts here on RHAP over the course of 2020. Sean was one of the main organizers of some really, really great talks about the impact that Black contestants have had both on the show and the show has had on these Black contestants subsequently. And as a result, they got there, they sat down Kathy style with Jeff Probst and the production team, and we were able to get the diversity initiative out in terms of casting. Sean has said that basically, if he says, let me read the direct quote here. So, I have was able to collaborate and co-host with Rob Cesternino to bring our collective voices on his RHAP podcast for an informed roundtable with many different Black Survivor contestants to correct and address some of the indiscretions and inconsistencies with regard to equitable opportunities for all contestants, as well as more diversity on the production side. So maybe once those things are rectified, if you will, it would make sense to contemplate a comeback. For what it's worth, steps have been taken, Chantele. But do you think it's the proper amount of steps to get Sean interested in going back onto the show?
I do. I do think that, with some of the winners that have happened, especially in the new era, 2020 was pretty powerful in general with, reality TV and even network television with how they're representing BIPOC individuals and even other diverse individuals. I think that it would be pretty monumentous if somebody that felt at one point that they were kind of being on the outside and now they're allowed to be able to be inside with this new initiative, playing with more people that look like them. That was like kind of one thing that really didn't happen very much, especially in his era, where there wasn't another Black man that he would be able to play with. There was Vesepia, which was another Black female, but that was it. There was 2 people. And now there would be more people like it. It just would be a different game for him to be able to navigate, where he might feel more comfortable. He might have more kinship. He might have a better time. He might, I don't know. I think that for him to be able to experience the change of being able to play in the new era, I think that would be really powerful for him as someone that was pushing forward this narrative and this movement. So I think that it would be pretty awesome for him to take that opportunity if it's offered to him.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the man is such an incredible character who I think could fit in with some of the best crack ups in Survivor history, where he absolutely lit up the screen. I will always remember after John was voted out and he was singing songs from The Wiz under the waterfall in celebration. Like, the man was just so much like sunshine contained, but not like a huge sunny personality, if that makes sense. Like, he certainly was not completely positive all the time, but there's moments that I get affiliated with this season, like him and Pascal rolling around in the sand together after winning the reward. Subsequently, him crushing his gonads on the horse as he's riding it. Like, there's so many moments around this man that, again, it's terrible that due to circumstances, he has not been brought back. And it sucks that we would have to wait 46 seasons to have it happen. He is 52, which, again, listen, from Survivor contestant perspective, is on the older side, but not too old compared to a lot of the other contestants that we have been putting forward here. Sean has said, it would have to come down to, like, I have a family right now. I'd have to pray on it. It's up in the air. The fact that he's saying it's up in the air, to me, I think
That's
helps, considering that he has pretty much said a flat no before any of this stuff happened in 2019 and 2020.
And maybe it's the shorter season, right? Like, maybe the extra 2 weeks that he wouldn't have to be suffering out there and on the island. Maybe that's going to be beneficial. But I do think that this would be a season where he more likely could say yes to. Like, I feel like it's monumentous. It's showing change. He was a part of change. He would like to get to experience the two worlds, I think would be really powerful. And I think that for his story, for himself in the Survivor world, I think that would be a really nice circle moment.
Yeah, and I think as well it would be, the show also kind of showing to him, "Hey, you felt disregarded by us for various reasons." Like, "No, you have brought stuff that's been incredibly important to us that we have been able to implement to great effect in our show." I think if anything, the show has more eyes on Sean now than ever because he was the one to sit down with them to show them like, yes, I still care about this show. I still care about the things that you are doing to the point that I will express how unhappy I am with the things that you are doing. I haven't really done any research to see like how Sean has responded in the past few years to everything. Again, a lot of the interviews that have been done with him have been largely before the diversity initiative was announced, but I would hope, and maybe this is wishful thinking, that if I'm Survivor production, I would consider Sean now more than ever, just due to obviously not only the initiative proper, but the fact that this was somebody that was very recently in front of us.
100%. And if they're having a season 50, I would hope that they were still taking into consideration the BIPOC, the diversity initiative. Like that is going to be part of their casting criteria. So he would be a great representation in season 50. So I can't imagine them not thinking that he is like someone that they want to see as part of that season.
Last person I want to talk about from this group is the man that Sean sang about for his demise, danced on his grave here, John Carroll, because John Carroll, his presence obviously looms large in Survivor history. He was at least showcased as like the king of this alliance that got completely toppled and ended up with no clothes on, crying in his final words about how much this experience had meant to him. He was someone that everyone was kind of rooting for their downfall, despite the fact that John claimed that Pascal and Aaliyah were rooting for his success in the game. It was quite the opposite. But Chantele, from a lens now, how much is Johnny Pots and Pans cooking for a chance to return?
I think he has a good chance, to be honest. Like
Really
he
interesting.
is like he was a villain who thought that he was the hero. I
Mm.
felt, like he had this, his group together and like they were the good people and they were do the work hard and and then Boston Rob and Sean and they were all the bad people and they can't come move and they can't win and he had the story of being LGBTQ plus.
Hmm.
At that point, one of the very first people that was representing on reality television, and so he had a really big story. I felt, and I think that he really believed he was going to win the season, and so. I'm curious to see how he would play in this new era. I'm curious to see if he still cares about the show, if he's still been involved in competitive reality shows and watching stuff. I believe he did Sequester, right? Like during
Oh,
2020.
yes, I do believe he did. Yeah, he did the all survivor sequester. I also believe in his quarantine questionnaire he mentioned liking David versus Goliath. So like it's clear he's watching modern seasons. I mean, when he was asked by Dalton Ross, he was like an emphatic yes. He would absolutely love to do it again. So it's not a question from my perspective of would he want to do it. I think the question to me is like there have been now, John was sort of the progenitor of this, but now the halls of Survivor have been littered with these sort of power players that get dethroned. Does John Carroll sort of stand the test of time, and could he be still in contention after all these years?
I personally, I think so.
Okay.
For the fact that like we don't have that many people. Well, there probably are, and I just can't think of them right now. There's so many seasons, and I'm just like making these bold statements, and I'm like probably completely wrong. But like, I feel like I haven't seen someone like him in a while, or like or he's like the first version of this person. I would like to see how they fare in this new era. But like, how are they going to be able to handle him being told what to do and go get firewood and go get some, rocks or whatever? Like, I don't know if people would really listen to him. So I am just curious to see how he would fare with people that are not going to be as malleable and not willing to listen to him necessarily. I want to see how if he can adapt, if he was only able to do well as he did with this group of people in this time, or if it's going to be transferable into a new era. So I'm just curious. I want to see how you'd play.
We see if he's as non-transferable as that vote steal from Game Changers. Anything we want to
Exactly.
dote on with Pascal, the General, Tammy? I feel like, Tammy in particular was a great character, won the Sue Hawk Award, I believe, that Rosie O'Donnell crowned her at in the reunion. But I feel like, especially in over 20 years later, I don't think these three, and Zoe as well, they're not necessarily being considered for anything, in my opinion.
Zoe, no.
Noe.
Noe. Tammy, maybe a little bit, just for the fact that she was pretty strong physically and she was quite loyal. But there's a lot of other people I think that could
Right.
fill her character description here. Pascal, definitely lovable. He makes me wonder if they're going to bring back the what's the when they bring their own thing from home. What's it called?
Oh, well, they call them now, I think, like
Luxury? No,
they were called luxury items beforehand. I feel like now they were called, like, I don't know, like objects of affection or something.
Oh,
And
do they still get to bring them?
they still get to bring them. I think Co Wrong is the only relatively modern season where we actually saw them on screen.
Well, was it Angelina saying her earrings were fishing hooks, or
No, that
somebody
was
said that?
PG brought earrings that
PG.
had flint in them, and they were confiscated.
So I just remember seeing his big flag, and like he was able to win that challenge with having this big flag. It was just so like bright. So that was something that he contributed, I guess. He's definitely very sweet. I liked his relationship with Nalia. I'm not sure if we need to see him again, but if he was doing a podcast about the season, I'd watch.
A podcal, if you will.
Podcast, exactly. We could workshop that one.
Thank you.
And the general, I'm good.
I think we can pass on the general, send him back into the foxhole here. And here we finish with our pre-jurors. So I'll actually work my way up in this case. We have the holy man himself, Peter Harkey, Mama Patricia. We have Hunter, which I would say was definitely one of the rarefied first shock pre-merge boots, considering he was the big, strong leader of Madama, which is probably the reason why he was booted. We have Sarah. We have Gabriel K., the poor sweet boy that was just totally out of his element. Gina Cruz, also a very fun underdog who made it all the way right before the merge. And of course, Boston Rob Mariano. So, I don't know, Chantele, I don't want to necessarily wield executive power too much, but is there something I can propose to you right now, if you don't mind?
Oh.
Because there will be multiple chances to vote Boston Rob in. This is a 5-time player. I'm not going to put the cart before the horse of when we talk about Survivor Redemption Island. Suffice it to say, I think we'll really be scrounging the bottom of the barrel to find people to bring on there. So unless you are like absolutely dying to put Boston Rob on the list today, I would put a pin in him until I can get to one of his other seasons and then vote him through.
I would have to agree. I know that I was saying that I love Boston Rob at this point, and I still do, but I do feel that he likely will not even be asked to come on. He's just been doing so many things so far, right?
And listen, the line from Boston Rob, which we can talk about during the Redemption Island podcast, is he has said, I will only come back to play Survivor if there's like something special to it, if there's sort of like a new format to it, because now he's done it all. He doesn't necessarily want to come back again for the same old stuff he's been doing for 100+ days.
Exactly. So I don't know if he's actually going to be on this particular list, like in actuality. And so as much as I love him, I love seeing him play. I love seeing him on TV. I did just watch him on Deal or No Deal Island. And I don't know if he needs to be a part of this group of people. Anyways, but he probably would get on the list anyway, like for it to be voted on in his other 4 seasons or 3 seasons that he'd be voting for him. So I'm cool. Your proposal has been accepted.
Oh, thank you. Again, that's the true Kathy negotiation talk. Is there anyone else from this pre-merge group? I would imagine that nobody is necessarily someone that we're saying like we got to put on here or would necessarily be looked at. But is there anyone you want to highlight from these other 6 people?
I mean, maybe Hunter, but there's going to be a few people like Hunter to push forward.
Yeah, there's even another strong guy named Hunter who could have taken his spot.
Exactly. But maybe him, just because he would be the pioneer, and it'd be kind of interesting to see this archetype of like the good old boy, I think is what that woman was called them, that would
Mm-hmm.
be able to do all the fishing and the fighting and like they could do everything. They're just so good at being that archetype. Um, so maybe Hunter, but
Yeah.
like his personality for me is like
I
so.
I feel like Hunter, the idea of him lingers more, sort of like John, in my opinion, than him actually. Even though John, I think, is a much better character. Hunter does sort of memorably on the way out call them a bunch of knuckleheads, and that they're gonna have to call in the Coast Guard to come get them once Mata Amo just ends up starving. So, I mean, the thing to take away from this cast is, in my opinion, Survivor Marquesas is a bit underrated. Like, this is a pretty dang good cast, especially looking at this pre-merge group. Like, Peter and Patricia, such big characters. Sarah is one of these first examples of like someone who is consistently on the chopping block but ends up getting saved every time. And of course, there were whispers of, her and Boston Rob in the raft at
Ooh.
night. Gabriel was someone that very much felt out of time, even though it's only season 4, that like he very much had that season 1 mentality of I'm just here for the adventure. And so as a result, John decides to make this controversial move and cut him instead of a Sean or a Vesepia. And then Gina, again, I think Gina was like a pretty big favorite at the time. I know she had been talked about a bit in those early days. I don't know specifically in like the returnee way, despite the fact that she ended up in 11th place. She certainly went to tribal council every episode except for one. And she was just an absolute sweetheart. She's not exactly a personality type I'd like to see come back, but this is another reason why I like this exercise as well, especially with these old seasons, is to remind us of like how stacked some of these old seasons were in terms of casting.
Definitely stacked. Like Gina specifically, I liked her, but I wanted her to work with Rob. Like, come on, like stop it. I wish that Rob and Sean kind of weren't really on an island. Well, they weren't, but with terms of being able to get people together, I know that they were really young and they're kind of broy and they're a little bit lazy, and so like that wasn't really the style of gameplay that people appreciated back then, especially if you're playing the game with them. But I wish that she was able to maybe bond with that young person group and maybe make something happen there. It just sucked that I wanted to root for her, but she wasn't playing with the people that I was rooting for more.
All right, Chantele, it is now our job. We review the cast of Survivor Marquesas. We got to come up with a list here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what Rob and I did was we made like a list of, okay, what's your 3? What's my 3?
Mm-hmm.
For the formality's sake, I think I would imagine there are at least 2 that you and I are both in agreement with should be on the list, which would be Kathy and Sean, correct?
100%.
Okay, so those 2 are definitive. Now we get into the rest of them. I think a couple names that have been thrown out would be Vesepia and would probably be John. Where are you sitting right now?
Those are my 2 on the button, really. So with Vesepia, like obviously I want to see her play again. I just don't know if season 50 is the right season for her to play again. And with John, I think that I also want to see play again, and he would be excited to play in that season. So we need to figure out a way to decide between these 2 people, because I would be happy with either of them being on the season.
I would, it's tough because I think Vesepia would be the one that idealistically I'd like to see more. I really like John, and I love the fact that he's hungry to come back on. But I also feel like Vesepia right now, almost corollary to what I was saying about Sean, has one of the best chances of coming back. I think with the show giving a bit more of an eye to diversity, looking back on the first Black person to win, let alone the first Black woman to win, could be this opportunity. Vesepia actually compares
what
it
if
to, like,
her and like Marianne were playing together because they won 20 years apart from each other, and like that would be kind of cool for season 50 to have that be something represented. Okay,
see, that's the thing, is that, look, does she have the most like sparkling personality from a winner perspective comparatively? No, but she actually compared herself a bit to like Danny Boatwright being cast on Winners at War, of like, if the theme fits it, and if you're bringing back a legend, I think you could define a legend as the first Black person to win Survivor, and arguably a reality show, depending on how you define it.
Yeah, no, you're definitely swaying me. Your artful skills of negotiation are working.
I learned from the best, KVO. Okay, you know what? In a season of people flipping and flopping, forever changing the course of Survivor history, I think it only appropriate that I do so as well. Why the hell not? Like, Chantel, what are we doing here if we are trying to be like super realistic, by the book, etc.? We want to be in a certain respect, but at the same time, if John Carroll is so on the fringe, I say why not welcome him in? The barrier has already been broken. We brought a whole ass 4 people on for Survivor Borneo. I think we
Oh.
I think we can extend a quarter of the cast invitation to Survivor Marquesas.
Oh, okay. If we're having a fourth person, undoubtedly he's in. I thought that you're gonna be kicking out Vesepia for this
No.
position. If they're both included, I am more than happy because I do think that they both deserve, and I would love to see them both play.
Yeah,
So
so John Carroll, I did not want to piss you off, for lack of a better term. I think you deserve a spot on the list. I think we want to see a second season out of you, but we'll decide if the fans will.
absolutely. And so yeah, I forgot about the little pee part. Fun, fun. And that's probably why Kathy's on the season, because
Well, yeah, we have Kathy in the season. We could recreate it.
the pissing moment. Did it really work? That's actually what I'd want to know.
I believe that the myth is that it's not the best way to do it, but like, I guess if you're in a pinch, it may help. So I think it was really any port in a storm for poor John
It's
Carroll.
like you just say, let's try anything and something, and maybe the warmth of it would have been soothing to a certain degree.
So we'll add John to the list of with Vesepia, Kathy, and Sean to see if, ironically enough, he will get a season number 2.
Ooh, ooh.
There is one more thing that I want to bring up, Chantel. A wild card spot. Not for this, not for Survivor, but we have a lot of reality all-star shows out there nowadays between Traders, The Challenge, The GOAT, etc. If you could pick someone from Survivor Marquesas that you would want to see on one of those shows, who would it be?
Well, are we just omitting Boston Raw because
I mean, yeah,
want
considering that he has literally done it. And I think also, yeah, I mean, like, Boston Rob and Traders has been a sentence that has been uttered countless times over the past 6 months.
exactly. So, probably Kathy. If off the top of my head, I think Kathy would be really fun on both sides. Like,
Hmm.
I think she'd be a really strong faithful. She would probably get herself in trouble because she'd probably be right and she'd probably be loud, and the traders would be like, "We got to get rid of her." And then as a trader, I think that she could be like, I think that she could actually also play the role as a trader. So yeah, right now, first thought, Kathy is where my mind goes.
Yeah, I am thinking a little bit outside the box. I think that Tammy could be on, like, because she is apparently now like a hyper survivalist. I think she could be on like one of those like Race to Survive or Bear Grylls shows where like she wouldn't be on like
Yeah.
a Beyond the Edge celebrity version, because I would not say she's a huge celebrity, but I think we could randomly see her pop up. Like, remember when like Stephanie Gonzalez and Missy from Island of the Idols just randomly showed up on like that CW show that aired last year? Like, I could see a survival show where Tammy just randomly winds up there and we're like, oh, look, I guess this is what
Like,
Tammy's been doing.
I mean, I can see Tammy for sure, because yeah, we didn't talk about her that much, but I do think she was kind of like on the higher end of potential people that I could see cast on season 50. So her doing something else, that would be, I'd be interested. I'd watch it. I'd be shocked and surprised and pleasantly happy.
All right. Well, hopefully you all are pleasantly happy with our list. Well, as much as we may be on and off about this goat tender, you are the goat when it comes to talking about this. This was so great. Why don't you plug your social media right now for people who want to check out what you're doing?
Sure. You can definitely can find me at ShanFranFran on Instagram, and then I talk a lot of the challenge content. It's the summer right now, so this is the summer of Love Island for me. So I generally do both Love Island USA and UK daily when I can. On my channel, Reality Realist with 3 S's over there on YouTube.
All right, amazing. Tomorrow, we are going to Thailand, much like Jack did in Lost. And we also have a regretful experience to talk about, as we will be talking about the cast of Survivor Thailand. figuring out from there who should be on this list. Chantele, any wishful thinking? Anyone you'd want to pick out of that particular group to put on the
Can't even
ballot?
think of the cast right now. I'm not like Rob when he went through all the names of everybody from every season. I'm like, I can't even. Can you remind me who's on it?
Yeah, so like this is a Sheehan, this is Brian Heidick's season. We've got Jan, Helen, Ted.
It's like I just remember these names. I don't remember their story.
All right,
I know.
Chantele pleads the fifth for the fifth season. It's okay, because I'll have plenty to talk about tomorrow with David Bloomberg, of course. If there's anyone to talk to about Survivor Thailand, it is the man that was there to see it all conclude. We'll be picking out some people from there as we conclude the first week of the Survivor Wishlist podcast. Of course, again, we'll be coming in your feeds every single weekday morning, 6 a.m. Eastern. Make sure you're subscribed. robhasawebsite.com/survivor feed. And of course, the video version is robhasawebsite.com/YouTube. Let your thoughts be known. I'm sure you have them at this point, and let them be heard as we continue through this very, very fun process. Thank you so much, Chantele, for coming on today. This was such a great time. I'll be back tomorrow with David Bloomberg to pick some people for Survivor 50 from the cast of Thailand. Until next time, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.